Lacking grounding in literature, again, does not show a good grasp of related literature. I have talked about this 2, 3 times. You've got to show understanding. See, why do we do literature reviews? Why do we have to do literature review? We all do literature review to first understand what, if I have a particular topic in mind, I have to go back to the literature to understand what has been done on this topic in the literature, what is being studied on this topic in the recent past, right? So that is one, familiarity with what has been done. Second thing is trying to understand, with this understanding of what has been done also comes the understanding of what has not been done in this literature, right? And that you have to read papers of the recent past to really understand where is the state of the literature, what is being done, what has not been done, why are the variables that I have in my study, why are they important, what is the role of these variables in the phenomena that I am trying to understand, right? So that again comes from understanding and reading of the literature. And the third thing is getting a good understanding of what would be the relevant theoretical frameworks to use to build my arguments in the literature. I think the literature review, we fear a lot about literature review, but literature review is a very simple step which is done to really understand what has happened so far, what has not happened, that gives us what are the important research questions to observe and to explore, and third, what are the relevant theoretical frameworks that would be needed to address the questions that I have in my mind or I have for my research, right? Drawing heavily from one or two papers is not enough. You've got to show and demonstrate that you have uh, done a rigorous job of reading papers, especially published in the last 5 to 10 years, to really know where the field is, where is it heading, what has been done, what has not been done. I don't need to say this now, using two old, outdated research articles, but missing the latest ones. I think I have done this enough.
So Soumya here.
Yes, Soumya.
Sir, I had communicated a systematic review paper to one of the A category journals,
Yes.
and the comment that I received was that though the review is very thorough, but still it appears to be a bit descriptive. So, if you could please tell me how I can improve that.
Okay. Uh, what does descriptive mean? Tell me first. What do you understand by the word descriptive?
So probably they meant that I have only mentioned that what other people have done, and probably they are looking for my perspective in a more crisp manner in that paper.
Exactly, Soumya. So descriptive means you are describing, well, A has said this, B has said this, C has said this, D has said this. But you see, your role is the role of a storyteller, right? So if 5 people have told something, now your role is to actually stitch those 5 papers and come out with an insight, right? Not describe what 5 people have told. Yes, 5 people have told something, but our role is to really come out with something, some insight into how this work is unfolding. What are some of the directions in which this work seems to be going? Your insight can come through developing a new theoretical framework linking various ideas being studied in this literature. Your insights could come through developing some new research propositions uh, based on the review of the literature that you have done. So those are some of the things that you have got to think about, rather than descriptive means plainly describing what has been done.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So I'll just show you one of my papers that it was published as a book chapter, where we did a review of works that have been done in the Indian context on performance, organization performance,
Okay.
right? And so when we come to literature review, I'll just show you that paper. And towards the end, what we did was we created a framework linking various ideas that have been done or explored
Okay.
in the literature, and saying that, okay, going forward, there is a need to, this is a theoretical framework based on our review, and these are some of the ideas. Some of these relationships have been tested, some of these have not been tested, and future works should look at these kinds of things. These are some of the questions that are still not answered. I think that is the insight that readers and reviewers are
Viewers.
looking at. There, nobody is, see, if you just describe the papers or the works that have been done, put yourself in the shoes of the reader.
Hmm.
Will you really like a paper which is just saying, okay, this has been done, that has been done, and so on, compared to a paper where people are actually giving you some ideas on what should be done in the future based on the review,
Yes.
right? So I think that is what people look for in a review article, and that is why review articles are actually cited a lot, because they present some nice insights into what should be done in the future.
So I have a question.
Yeah.
Uh, there are some papers which I've read are written in third person, and some papers and some theses also I've read where the author is writing that I have gone through this and I've seen this. In the first person they are writing it. So which one is the correct way? It should be written in the past tense or in future tense or in the present tense or the first person or the third person.
So usually, I would say you should always write your literature review sections in past tense, that this has been done, right? And so and so, this study had been done, and using that, because you are quoting works that have been published in the past, and then building on it and saying that, okay, this needs to be done in the future. So when you are quoting literature, always do it in the past tense. When it comes to third person or first person, there also I would say that writing in terms of in third person is a much uh, uh, maybe safer way to present ideas than saying I have not done this and I have done that, that kind of thing. Even if you are to talk about your own work, I what I always do in my papers is, if I have to quote my paper that got published in 2013, I would never say that I wrote a paper in 2013 on this idea. I would always say Gupta 2013 talked about this idea. Yeah.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. Thank you.
That is never say that I in 2013 had written this. I, always it is better to say Gupta et al. Or Gupta in 2013, 2014, they mentioned about these ideas. And we are building on the ideas mentioned by them, right? Even though it is the same Gupta who's building on his own work, it is better to quote it that way.
So that's what I was asking. Now you said that, now we are building a work on this. So that means the first person has been used.
Yeah, so in that case, you will obviously have to talk about, see, you will always say that we are developing this, we are building this, right? There is no running away from that. But I'm saying the uh, in the referencing of papers done by you, don't use first person, use the third person. You will always have, obviously you will have to say that we are hypothesizing or we collected the data, right? And so there you will need to use V and I. You cannot say they collected the data and they hypothesized.
It is said that data has been collected.
Huh?
It is generally written that data has been collected. It is very rarely I've read that we collected data. So which one is the
No, both are correct. Both are correct. There, both are correct. You can use we collected the data or data was collected from this. So I don't see there is a problem there in writing it that way. Yeah.
thank you, sir. Thank you.
Yeah.
So Riftika, I
Yes.
have a question. On the second point, drawing heavily from one or two papers, I
Yes.
just wanted to ask, in terms of literature review, is there any specified number of papers one should read before we draw upon, okay, I now stop reading my literature review?
No, there is no such thing.
Okay.
But there, it will happen that after some point, when you are doing literature review, you will start to see that some of the papers get repeated again and again.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So that is where. So now you see that there are no new papers coming up. Okay,
Okay.
that is an indication that you have exhausted the literature review. Basically, you have exhausted the literature now.
Like some of my seniors, they said, Kini 100, 200, you have to read. But if I feel by reading after 80, 85 papers, I feel, okay, I've got my variables. I know what I'm doing is correct. What I thought is in the direction research can be done. So I think then I feel that I can stop. But then they say, Ki, nahi, 200 padho, 100 padho. So that kind.
No, don't go by the number, but also don't just. It is good that you have identified your variables, but don't in your willingness to stop. Don't miss out on important works. I think I can just say that when you are doing literature review, don't miss out on maybe relevant papers that may be useful for you.
I'll take this. Thank you.
Sir, Asha here. I have
Yes.
a question.
Yes.
Sir, when you write the literature review, how do we intersperse the seminal papers and the recent papers? Is there a way to do it? Is there a best practice, to start with a seminal paper and then go to the recent ones, or vice versa, or something like that?
Okay. So you see, um, just think about it. Let's say you are talking about citizenship behavior, organization citizenship behavior. Okay. Or engagement, whatever. Let's take up an example of citizenship behavior. Now, if you start to talk about citizenship behavior, what will you need to do in the first place?
We may have to start with the definition of citizenship
So
behavior.
you will have to first describe to the reader what is citizenship behavior, right?
Right. Yeah.
Now, the moment you have to describe to the reader that what do you mean, what is what is the definition that you are using in your paper of OCB, what will you have to do? You will have to quote that seminal article which actually gave the definition of OCB, correct?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So you cannot just say that OCB, this work has been done on OCB without actually defining what is OCB, right? So you will have to talk about that citizenship is an important area of work, right? And you can maybe start by saying that citizenship is a variable that has been studied in the recent past. You can quote some of one or two studies in the recent 5 years, but immediately you have to, in the next sentence or next few lines, you will have to come and sort of explain what do you mean by organization citizenship behavior. So you will have to come up very often, you will have to right at the upfront, you will have to state the definitions of your constructs, and that is where the seminal articles come in. And then you move on to what has been the work that has been done on the variable in the recent past, where your recent articles and the literature that you quote in the last 10 years come in.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, sir. Yeah. Thank you.
Sir, Simran this side.
Yes.
Sir, for example, you took the example of OCB. Now, let's say, for example, I am studying the impact of OCB on one mediator and then leading to the dependent variable. Now, while doing the analysis, I realized कि OCB के जो sub constructs हैं, if I would study them individually also, that might be relevant for the study. So, do I need to again dwell into the literature and see कि सब इन constructs का क्या effect है on dependent variable and on the mediator, or can I take OCB in the literature? That's all.
No, so, but you are saying you have more than OCB in your paper,
Yes,
right?
I'm telling one example, sir. For example, I am studying that emotional intelligent people would have, a tendency to avoid looking at negative things. So they might avoid unfairness in the organization. So emotionally intelligent people would have positive fairness perception, which would eventually lead to good job performance. Now, what I want to ask, for example, I am studying Dr. Baron's model of emotional intelligence, and there are 15 sub-constructs here.
Okay.
Or I believe that if individually I would see the effect, it would have more relevance for the industry, because if I would merge all of these things, the results would get diluted.
Okay.
So if I'm doing this way, that I'm individually studying the mediation effect of all these 15 subconstructs, do I again need to dwell into the literature and see, for example, optimism एक subconstruct है, तो उसका क्या effect है on justice and then on job performance? सबका individual review of literature करेंगे या emotional intelligence का ही करना would be enough?
If you are theorizing about individual constructs, then you will have to talk about individual level literature, construct level literature. If you are talking about overall EI, emotional intelligence, then you can talk about the overall EI literature. So every hypothesis, Simran, has to be justified. So if you're talking about optimism to performance, then you'll have to talk about the rationale or the logic for building or expecting the relationship between optimism and performance. Is that okay?
Okay, sir.
Yeah, so you'll have to talk about all the subconstructs and their relationships to performance.